All right, good day, people. This is going to serve as a quick introduction to the ins and outs of the third declension. My goal is to key this to what you need to know for the third declension in lesson 40, and yet create an opportunity to build on this material down the road in the future. Um, our starting point is going to be just the general orientation to the basics of the third declension. So be patient with me as I write. Okay. When we start with third declension, we're going to start with nouns. We'll do adjectives later. But as we start to work with third declension nouns, and particularly if you scan the lesson 40 vocab list, you're going to find nouns in this particular lesson that are either masculine or feminine. And the masculine and feminine nouns of the third declension share the same set of endings. No matter whether the noun is masculine or whether it's feminine. And that leads into one of the peculiar challenges of the third declension is that there is no one consistent way to differentiate the gender of third declension nouns when you see them. So their gender must be memorized when you are learning them in a vocab list. We'll see a couple of examples of third declension nouns for you to observe that. And I'll just wait to show that to you in a moment. I will tell you that in a future lesson, you'll also learn about neuter third declension nouns. And as always, neuter nouns are going to be a bit distinctive. We'll learn them in a later lesson. And where they are distinctive, the short version of things is that the neuter law takes over. When we do learn those, well, the neuter law applies. All right, so within the nouns, well, let me back up and say, we will learn third declension adjectives in a later lesson. I'm not going to seek to put them before you right now because it's quite a bit later that they are introduced into Latin for Americans. When we deal with third declension nouns, and here's the point at which I'll throw some vocab entries at you, you're going to encounter nouns like lex, legis. The feminine noun, that means law, or its counterpart, not really counterpart, but a very similarly formed noun in the nominative singular and then in the genitive singular, but it is masculine and it is the noun that means king. Okay. With the point of showing you these two vocab entries is once again to emphasize the point that just on the basis of appearance, there's no way to tell the gender of these nouns, so you're going to have to work extra hard to memorize the gender. However, let me just highlight that. Although it's probably pretty obvious because I think I've said it about 7 times and you're bright and don't need me to repeat that. The other thing that's going to appear in the vocab entry is a couple of brief points that we can observe and then move on to the particulars of other endings. When you look at the nominative singular forms, especially if you look at the other nouns in the vocab list, there is no consistent pattern for the nominative singular forms endings. Unlike first declension, which typically ends in A in the nominative singular, or second declension, which ends in US or R, if it's masculine, there's no consistent nominative singular spelling or form. Okay. And that means that you're going to have to be, again, diligent about um, uh, learning the vocab entries. Next point to draw out is evident from looking at the genitive, and there are actually 2 points here. Okay. There are very dramatic stem changes. And I would dare say that those dramatic stem changes are largely unpredictable stem changes. Now, you might say, wait a second, it's very predictable. Lex went to legis, and so Rex is going to go to regus. But when you look at the vocab entry for pox, pocus, meaning peace, you're going to see a contrast where the stem involves the letter C, not the letter G. So they're going to be, largely speaking, unpredictable stem changes that occur. I will tell you, though, that derivatives, the English derivatives, are a great way to help you remember the stem changes. So we don't have too many direct derivatives from the nominative lex or rex, except, well, for dinosaurs like the Tyrannosaurus rex or a dog's name. And in a few fossilized phrases like lex talionis, the law of retribution, eye for an eye sort of thing. But with the exception of those loan words of the nominative, the best way to remember the stem change might be from thinking about derivatives such as legislature or legal, and words like regal. Whoops, that's not how you spell it. And I'm going to be lazy and not erase. Not yet, anyway. Regal as a stem change. Okay, so that effort to learn the nominative singular should be equally balanced by effort to learn the genitive. Dramatic, unpredictable stem changes. Okay. The next thing to note, and this is really, really super duper important, and so I'm going to switch over to a highlighter pen in the hopes of having it operate. Indeed it does. Yay! Okay. And then back to a regular pen. Okay. Is the fact that all third declension nouns let me just give myself a little bit more writing room here, have a genitive singular ending in is. In other words, that's the marker that a noun truly belongs to the third declension. It doesn't matter whether it's rex, regis, or homo, hominis, or miles, militis, or neuter nouns that you'll learn later like carmen, carminis, or tempus, temporis. The fact that the genitive ends in short is, and I want to emphasize that it is a short is, is the marker that that noun is going to belong to the third declension. All right, so that's all the information you can get out of a vocab entry on the third declension, and it does point to some consistencies that will not only benefit you in lesson 40, but in the other lessons that we face before the end of the semester when working with a third declension. So from there, I'm going to go to a different slide, well, create a different slide that's going to talk now about the endings. Okay. So the endings of the third declension can be found in the textbook, and I'm probably not going to write them all out because I'm just that kind of a lazy guy, but encourage you to direct your attention in the textbook to the sample of the sample declension of miles and lex, which you can find on page 281 in the textbook. There are other charts in the back of the textbook, which go into a little bit more detail, and you can run through them later, although you run the risk of being confused by some of the weirdness of the third declension, which we don't want to deal with right yet. Tell you what, I will not be lazy. I will write the endings of the third declension. The nominative is, well, just whatever it is. And I will tell you that it's going to take an effort to memorize homo, miles, rex, lex, pax, salus, and all the others. The genitive, all the way through the ablative singular, is, and it's worth noting this, you're going to have to account for the stem change. I can't underemphasize, or actually I can't overemphasize enough the importance of the stem change that shows up. So there's going to be the stem change, but the ending itself is, and it's a short is, then long I, then em, then short e. The chart in the textbook neglects, as always, the vocative case. And I'm going to go ahead and put it up here, and it's just going to be the same as the nominative. Okay? And therefore, there won't be a stem change that shows up. So when you go from salus to salutis to saluti to salutem to salute, the vocative is going to be salus. But it's not going to be exceedingly common to, how shall we say, address health or safety in the vocative case. A word like homo, meaning person or man or dude, or miles, meaning soldier, you will often see in the vocative. Okay. Over here, I'll use a different color for plural endings. They're still nominative, but now plural. The endings are going to be long es, ibus, long es or ace, ibus, and for the vocative, it'll go back to, whoops, didn't want to do that. It'll go back to being identical to the nominative. In this case, though, the nominative plural. And super quickly, all of these forms on the plural side of things, they will show that stem change. So you've seen the chart in the textbook on page 281. If we threw in a different third declension noun that is represented there, like homo, hominis, meaning person, be homo, hominis, homini, hominem, homina, homo in the vocative singular, homines, hominum, hominibus, homines, hominibus, homines. Okay, so you can see how the stem change here, how the stem change repeats throughout all the plural forms. All right, the endings of the third declension. What I'm going to do is try to make this economical in terms of your time and my time, and just quickly highlight a few things. And I'm going to grab a highlighter, and I'm going to choose to highlight this, and this, and this. You're going to get very tired of all my highlighting. Over here, use a slightly different set of colors. Okay. To draw attention to some potential sticking points. Some potential sticking points with the new endings of the third declension. It does become very important to know and to hold in your head what declension a noun belongs to. Okay? So just a super quick example, if I give you militus, two things I'd want you to note, okay, as I'm going to start running down these endings, militus, okay. Note number one, that it's short is, and that it is genitive singular. What I really want you to note is that it's not the same ending as you would see on a first or second declension noun, like servis or puellis, where these macrons are good indicators of the dative and ablative plural, okay, for first and second declension nouns. So caution number one about highlighted endings is the short is, the fact that it's short is significant. Second, potentially ambiguous ending, and pardon me, let me put this kind of back up in view. The ending long I on a word like hominy, third declension noun, that's going to be a dative singular ending. Okay. It is, again, not the same as an ending such as, well, I'm going to go ahead and switch colors over here. It's not like serui, nominative plural, or templi, genitive singular. Okay. Again, on the second declension, the long I is either nominative plural in some cases, like serui, or genitive singular. On a third declension noun, you'll have to adjust that long I as the indicator of the dative. Okay. All right. Next little bit of observation is the ending short E. I'll go ahead and use red one more time here. On a noun like, let's say pake, that is an ablative singular ending, so an adjustment. It is not the same thing as the vocative singular, the ending short E on say serwe or amique, where such a form would be in the vocative singular. Okay, all right. So that covers some of the potential confuzzlements of the third declension singular endings. I'm going to try very quickly to do a little stunt. Hang on just a second. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to clone the page, which gives me a second version of it, and sorry to talk to myself in the middle of all that. And now, super quickly scroll down and get rid of these singular endings. Not very efficiently. And that way I can scroll back up and put all the plural ones into view. With the ending long es. Okay. So let's go with a nice third declension noun like miletes, or a feminine one like leges. You run the risk of potential confusion because the ending long es could be either nominative or vocative plural. Okay, and really not so much vocative. You'll know when you see a vocative noun. It's true, it could be. But really the key decision point is to decide whether miletes or leges in a sentence would be nominative or accusative plural. And to do that, you really need to use context. Okay. One would be to check and see if a word like miletes or leges, if it can be the subject of an appropriate third person plural verb. Okay. So if the verb is third person and plural, conceivably a word like miletes or leges could be the subject of that. If not, if more likely, well, not more likely, if the verb is a verb like laudo, I praise, or spectat, she watches, there's no way that these words could be the subject, and so you're going to be more inclined to handle them as accusative, as the direct object in such a sentence. So checking the verb is a really good first step. The second step that is also really valuable is look for signs on adjectives. Because when you are describing these third declension nouns with adjectives, chances are the adjectives, until you learn adjectives of the third declension, those adjectives are going to continue to use the old first and second declension endings. So if I threw at you a phrase like milites boni, good soldiers, in a sentence, even before you got to the verb in the sentence, you'd be likely to say, hey, milites and boni, those can both be masculine nominative plural forms, and chances are good soldiers is the nominative plural subject of the sentence. On the other hand, if you have a phrase like leges bonas, okay, when you see that, bearing in mind that law is a feminine noun, long es could be accusative plural. If you see the adjective bonas, which is definitely feminine and accusative in plural, that's a good indicator that your third declension noun is probably accusative case. It is probably the direct object in the sentence. All right, so adjectives, again, they use their old endings, first and second declension endings, even when they're describing third declension nouns. And so they can be valuable indicators of what case a new third declension noun is in a sentence. All right, the last thing I want to point out, and I have to scroll back up very briefly to do it, regards the ending um that you see up here. And I'm going to go back and grab the highlighter pen and see if I can't highlight my way down to some woohoo free space to kind of add an entry about the ending um. Okay. So on a third declension noun, the ending um, say on militum or legum, not to overuse these nouns on you, these endings have to be thought of as being genitive and plural. Again, masculine or feminine, doesn't matter with these third declension nouns. But you have to think of these as being genitive and plural instead of what you used to think of the ending um. Okay? They do not equal the ending that you would see on servum, which would be accusative singular, or templum, which could be nominative or accusative singular. So, big picture, you can also rely on adjectives with this ending as well, and with the other endings that I've highlighted so far. But as you learn new third declension nouns, it's important when you kind of absorb them to think of them as being third declension, so that when you see the form militum or legum or pacum or salutum, you can say, ah, that's genitive, and give it an appropriate translation. Okay, that's the quick orientation to the third declension. We'll get more practice going forward. You know, you can always use the computer drill program at home or in the school library. Also, tonight's homework or the homework in the oral practice can give you a chance to get conversant with these endings and handling the stem changes. That's it for now. I'm going to press stop record and have an awesome rest of your day.